to do something a little bit different this week. Psychology of gender is not something we typically see covered in an introduction to psychology class, but it's something that I feel is really important. It's also something that, as students, this may not be a topic that you've thought about before or conversations you've had before. And un- although all of the topics we discuss in this class touch our lives in different ways, this is one that's sort of more universal. Gender influences everybody. This conversation touches everybody in different ways. Um, but being able to have these conversations and think about some of these topics are really important in an ever evolving world. And so I always like to give the preface that in this lecture, or in this unit rather, I'm gonna say things that you may not agree with, that may be different from your values, your family's values, your religious values, your political values, any of the above. That's okay. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, what to believe, what's right or wrong. All I ask is that you listen, you keep an open mind, and you are open to the possibility of thinking about things in different ways than you have before. Um, and so that said, let's get started. Take out a piece of paper. You can pause the video if you need to do that. But I want to start with just a little activity. I'll just put everything up there. I want you to draw a firefighter, a pilot, and a teacher. Stick figures are fine. This doesn't need to be anything too elaborate. I'm not going to see it. But you're going to draw a firefighter, a doctor, and a teacher, and then give each one of them a first name. So pause the video for as long as you need to do that. If you're coming back now, I'm assuming that you have completed your drawings. Look at your firefighter. What name did you give them? What name did you give your doctor? What name did you give your teacher? What characteristics did you give these characters that I asked you to create? Now, I'm not sure, I can't see, but when I do this exercise in class, what I tend to find is that the firefighter and the doctor are given male names. You instantly envision a male doctor, a male firefighter. And the teacher is usually given a female name. We usually envision teachers as female. Was that true for you? If it was, don't be concerned. You would fall right into the majority. And if it wasn't, interesting. Why do you think this is, though? Why do you think we instantly associate jobs like firefighting and being a doctor to being a male, or jobs like being a teacher to being a woman? These are related to the ways that we think about gender in our society. I'll show you this short video where a teacher did a very similar exercise to the one I just asked you to do with a group of elementary school students.
This afternoon, we're going to draw people doing different jobs. And the first job we're going to draw is a firefighter.
Have a think in your head what a firefighter looks like.
What's your firefighter called?
Mine's called Firefighter Gary.
Firefighter Stan. Firefighter Simon.
He's big and strong.
He's got a big helmet on.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Next, we're going to draw a surgeon.
Have you thought of a name for your surgeon?
Jim Bob.
Jim Bob.
He's a brain surgeon.
I think he would wear a stethoscope.
He gives you medicine. That's his ambulance.
Okay, next, we're going to draw a fighter pilot.
This is his jet plane.
He rescues people.
He likes to do stunts in the air and stuff.
Okay, now who would like to meet these people for real?
They're dressed up.
My name's Tamsin and I'm a surgeon in the NHS.
My name's Lauren and I'm a pilot in the Royal Air Force.
My name's Lucy. I'm a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade.
So who wants to know how to do an operation?
Did you see how surprised those kids were when the firefighter, the pilot, and the surgeon or doctor, that's what they call it in the UK, when they turned out to be women? Those kids were so surprised. And then it flashed on the screen very quickly. I'll go back. Gender stereotypes, they come out really early, really early. Even before the age of 5, we start to recognize what's a male role, what's a female role, what's a characteristic of men or women. And if I asked you to think about some things that are characteristic of men or characteristic of women, I wonder what you might come up with. Usually for men, we hear things like strong and aggressive and assertive and confident. For women, we hear things like caring, nurturing, delicate. And so the question becomes, where did these things come from? But before we even do that, before we even touch that, we really need to think about what gender is. And so we'll get there in a second. I
Who
do
wants to know
want
how
to make a note that I'm not going to talk much about sexuality in this class. Sexuality refers to what someone is sexually attracted to, and it runs a spectrum from heterosexual, which is attraction to the opposite sex, to homosexual, which is attraction to the same sex. There's also things like bisexual, where you're equally attracted to people from both sexes, or asexual, which is when people don't feel sexual attraction at all. Sexuality is a huge spectrum. It is a fascinating conversation, but it's a different conversation than gender identity. And so while gender identity and sexual identity are often related, they're kind of like cousins. In this class, we are going to focus on what gender identity is. And so when I teach this class in person, I have this sort of think, pair, share activity where I ask students to think about some of the different questions about gender identity and where it comes from. And so I know this is online, but I'll ask you to think about these questions on your own. Okay. Do you think society treats boys and girls differently? What are girl behaviors and boy behaviors? How do you know what makes something a girl thing or a boy thing? And so I'll ask you to think about these, and hey, you never know, they might end up being the discussion question for this week. I have a couple of videos here about what gender is, but I'm going to jump a little bit out of order and we're going to think about some terminology. Now, I would love if you would look these up on your own. Pause the video here and look up what these different terms mean, and then come back and we'll go over them together. If you're coming back, I hope it's because you have looked these up on your own, but let's go over them. Sex, and I'm referring to the noun here, not the verb. Sex is as simple as biology. This is genetics, hormones, anatomy, chromosomes. We're talking about the distinction between genetic females who have an XX chromosome pair or genetic males who have an XY chromosome pair. Sex refers to the reproductive organs that we were born with. Do you have a penis or do you have a vagina? It's really that simple and straightforward. Gender is a lot less simple and straightforward. Gender refers to the individual's sense of being male, female, or something in between. It's our concept of the self as male or female. It's how we see and present ourselves in terms of our gender, whatever that may be, or however we identify. Gender is a spectrum. What do you think I mean by that? We tend to talk about gender as either male or female. For thousands of years, that's what we've done. But more and more, we're finding that that just doesn't work. That's just not enough to truly understand the wide range of experiences of gender that humans have. So we can think of it as sort of like a spectrum with gender on, with male on one side and female on the other side, but there's a whole lot of space in between. That may be a new concept for many of you. And that may go against some of the things that you've heard or some of the things that you've learned. That's okay. I just want you to think about this. Imagine instead of saying, when someone asks gender, instead of saying male or female, maybe it's a scale. Maybe it's 0 to 10, and 0 means male and 10 means female. And maybe you're a 7. Okay, so you're mostly female, but you like to wear pants, or you're what we might call a tomboy. Or maybe you're 3, you're more male than female, but like to do things that are stereotypically associated with being female. Can you imagine how that might make a more accurate description of who we are rather than these boxes that may not fit anymore? Interesting concept, right? Here. A person's sex and gender usually match. More often than not, they do. When they do, this is known as being cisgendered, when our body matches our identity. I have the body of a woman. I also feel like I am a woman. That makes me cisgender. Or conversely, a man who has the body of a man who feels like a man would be a cis man. But the reality of gender identity is far more complex. Sometimes a person's gender identity may be different from their sex. And this is what we call being transgendered, when body and identity do not match. So, transgendered people are those whose gender identity doesn't match their assigned sex. And there's vast amounts of differences in transgender people. Some experience a lot of distress from this. Imagine what it might feel like to live in a body that you feel like doesn't fit you. That is very stressful for a lot of trans individuals. But for some, it's not super stressful, and they're able to what we call socially transition or change some aspects about how they present themselves. And that's really enough to help them to feel sort of settled in their body. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Not everybody is clearly biologically male or female. About 17%, or sorry, about every 17 out of 1,000 people are what's called intersex. This is where we see chromosomal and anatomical features of both males and females, to put it in more blunt terms, being born with both a penis and a vagina. This presents a lot of challenges in our dichotomous or gender as, sort of male, female, in our world of the way we think about gender. What gender is that child? What do we do with that? Oftentimes, the parents will choose to just raise the child as one gender or the other, but they might get it wrong, and that can be really stressful for the child later on. The gist is that there's a whole continuum, a whole spectrum of genders that fall between male and female. And gender is also what we call fluid. It's not set in stone. Some days you feel more female, or some days you can feel more male. Humans like to lump everything into boxes. It's part of our organizational system. We've talked about that before. But the gist is that gender really just doesn't work like that. It's nuanced, it's fluid. Now, I've talked about this dichotomy, or kind of dichotomy means two different categories. We also call this a binary, right? This black and white differentiation between man and woman. That's the binary. But there's a lot of people who are non-binary, who feel like they don't fit into either category. And so this is what I meant about being gender fluid or intersex. I'll read you a quote from the APA fact sheet on non-binary gender identities. It's any gender identity that does not fall within the strict categories of contemporary Western society, which typically consider gender to be binary, meaning a man or a woman. Now, there's limited research on individuals with non-binary gender identities. It's really difficult to estimate the exact number of people who identify as being non-binary. In fact, most research hasn't included non-binary as a response category when we ask about gender. So this is likely drastically underreported. Okay. But it's estimated that non-binary individuals make up to about 25 to 35% of the transgender population. So not the entire population, but the population of being trans. I'm going to go back a couple slides now. And I'm going to play you 2 videos that talk about what gender is and how it's fluid.
If I can bring some sort of peace, some sort of light into someone's life in one of the most difficult and darkest times of their life, then I've done my job as a music therapist and as a human being. I know it gets better. Hi there, my name is Jerwin Manji. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I'm a music therapist. I chose music therapy because I wanted to combine my love for music with something that really fascinated me, which was psychology. In hospice care, and specifically the interventions that I choose to do with my patients, I'm asking them to be vulnerable. I'm asking them to open up about their lives. I'm asking them to share with me who they are as a person and everything that they've lived through. So me being a queer person, I take that same vulnerability and that same authenticness and apply what I want my patients to do, and I take that into my own life. Growing up in a Roman Catholic Filipino traditional culture, I really didn't express my queer identity because I was taught and I learned through other folks that being queer was not acceptable in those cultures, or it was looked down upon by different family members. I remember specifically one day I was at home at a sleepover with my siblings and my cousins, and we were watching A Cinderella Story with Hilary Duff and Chad Michael Murray. And Chad Michael Murray walked on screen onto the scene, and there was just something inside of me that was just like bubbling, and I didn't know what it was at first until other movies where I had seen other male actors, and I was like, wait, I think I'm attracted to men. Because my brothers and my cousins were all talking about the females, or they were talking about Hilary Duff specifically, and I was just like, she's cool, but she doesn't really do that for me. I came out in high school, and one of the first people I came out to was my best friend, and we're still best friends to this day. And when I told her that I was gay, she just looked at me and she said, Jerwin, I know, like, it's not that much of a surprise. As much as I tried hiding my queer identity, it just came out because that's just who I am. And when I decided to tell my family, I told my mom and my dad both on the same day, and they were both very accepting, very loving. They didn't treat me any differently. In fact, they told me that they would love me no matter what. Now I know that when things get really difficult, I have my friends and my family that I can turn to. But there was a period in my life where I forgot about that. Last year in 2019, I attempted suicide, and it was the darkest and toughest time in my life. But over the last year and a half now really, I've realized that I have so many people in my life that I can turn to. My friends, my family, my therapist. Today, life couldn't be better. I've made so many strides emotionally, mentally, personally. I found that accepting and just showing my queerness has brought this joy and has brought this happiness in my life that I never thought could exist. In society, we are taught that boys are blue and girls are pink. Those are what everyone perceives them as, but I don't feel that someone should be confined to the color blue or the color pink. What if you want to be the color yellow? Gender is completely fluid. You don't have to stick to A or B. They're all different shapes, all different sizes. If you're feeling lost right now because you're not sure of what you identify as, know that you can take your time. There's no set timeline of, oh my gosh, I'm turning this age, I need to know who I am. I feel that throughout your life, you explore different parts of you, you unlock different parts of yourself, and you can take the time to realize who you want to be and who you want to portray to the world. My hope is that if you're watching this
And so Jerwin spoke about suicide attempt. This is something we see quite a bit in the trans gender minority community. We'll talk a bit more about that coming up. I know it's a difficult topic to talk about, but still one that's really important to think about. I have one more video that I want you to watch about what gender is. They do a really good job of describing some of the different options.
Now, you will watch a video about gender. The video is audio described for people who are blind or have low vision. In a classroom, two people present.
We're going to take 2 minutes to talk about gender.
Oh, this has nothing to do with me.
Well, actually, gender does have to do with you.
Not to me.
Hold on. Everyone has a relationship with gender.
Whether you've thought about gender a little or a lot, it has impacted you. How you were named, what clothes you wear, expectations about what jobs you can do, and you get the point. Yep, every single person watching this video has been taught about gender from the very beginning, from birth.
We like to define people, right? So when people are born, society defines them by looking at their reproductive organs and labels them male or female.
It's a girl! Well, actually, it's more complicated than that.
Gender can be broken down into gender expression or gender identity. Let's look at some gender identities.
I'm Sophie, and I'm cisgender. The majority of people in our world identify as cisgender, sometimes without us even knowing it. Cis means I identify with the gender I was assigned at birth. When I was born, the doctor said,
"It's a girl."
And I still identify as a woman today.
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm also a woman. So when I was a baby...
Man holds a blue blanket.
It's a boy.
Tamara pulls away the blanket, revealing a pink one.
No. I'm a trans woman. I identify as a woman. Even though when I was born, I was assigned something different.
A man who is deaf signs.
I'm Garrett. I'm a cisgender man. When I was born, everyone said...
People throw blue balloons.
And today, I identify as a man.
Hi, I'm Bailey.
People surround Bailey with pink.
And I'm also a man, even though I was assigned female at birth.
People tear away pink to reveal blue.
I'm a trans man.
Hi, I'm C.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, and we're non-binary.
For me, that means I don't identify as either a woman or a man.
C and Lindsay are handed multicolored balloons.
And for me, that means I don't identify with a gender at all.
Lindsay tosses balloons.
Okay, but I'm confused. I mean, what about gender and sexuality?
Oh, I know. Sexuality is about who you're attracted to.
Yes.
So are you gay?
Nope. Gender and sexuality are both part of our identities, but they're completely different categories.
So don't assume someone's sexuality based on their gender.
Now let's dive into gender expression. Let me ask you something. If you're a cis man, do you need a plaid shirt, bulging muscles, to have no room for tears, to love sports?
Man has thrown a football.
No.
Man misses football.
This might work for some and not others. Why? Because there's no one way to express masculinity or femininity. That's for you to decide.
Everyone's allowed to have their own relationship to gender.
But there are different things that may affect how the world views your gender.
Or how you choose to express it. For example, makeup. Do you wear it? How do you wear it? How colorful do you make it?
Hair, is it short? Is it long? More natural? Braided? Did you shave it all off?
Clothes. Do you wear skirts? Pants? Both? Do you accessorize?
Body language. How do you walk? How do you sit?
A person signs.
All of these things can be expressions of gender.
You might express your gender differently at different points in your life.
For example, do you dress differently than you did as a middle schooler?
Photo of a middle schooler in a yearbook.
Thankfully, gender expression can evolve as you grow as a person.
Whew. Bottom line, you understand your identity better than anyone else.
No matter how you identify, you deserve to be believed and respected.
I like that video. They do a really nice job of showing some of the differences. Let's jump past this. I just love this quote from Emma Watson. It says, both men and women should feel free to be sensitive. Both men and women should feel free to be strong. It's time that we all perceive gender on a spectrum, not as two opposing sets of ideals. What do you think she means by two opposing sets of ideals? For me, it means this idea that women have to be one way, act one way, dress one way, and men have to be another way, act another way, dress another way. Imagine what the world might be like if we got rid of all of those restrictions and we could just wear what we want, do what we want, act how we want, obviously within reason, but without sort of having to stick to this gendered script. And that's essentially what The Child Called X story asks you to think about. We'll swing back to that in a little bit. So next we'll talk about where gender comes from. We've sort of hinted at this a little bit in some of the earlier content, but we'll really dig into that in the next lecture.